The night it happened, I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. I went to bed just like I always do, scrolling through my phone for a few minutes before finally turning off the light. The room was quiet, the kind of silence that feels almost heavy, and I remember thinking how peaceful everything seemed. But somewhere in the middle of the night, I woke up with a jolt, my heart pounding for no reason I could understand. At first, I thought maybe I'd had a bad dream, but as I tried to move, I realized I couldn't. My body was frozen, completely paralyzed, and a cold wave of fear washed over me. That's when I felt it, a presence in the room, something watching me from the darkness. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its eyes on me, unblinking and patient, as if it had been waiting for me to wake up. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, and every instinct in my body screamed that I was not alone. I wanted to call out, to scream for help, but my voice was trapped inside me. All I could do was lie there, helpless, as the feeling of being watched grew stronger and stronger. This is the true story of the night. I realized that sometimes the scariest things aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones you can feel, lurking in the shadows, waiting for you to close your eyes. If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night with the sense that something was watching you, you're not alone. Tonight, I'm sharing my story. And maybe, just maybe, it will help you understand that some nightmares are all too real. It started as just another night, nothing special or out of the ordinary. I finished my dinner, watched a little TV with my family, and then headed to my room to wind down. My routine was always the same: brush my teeth, check my phone, and set my alarm for the next morning. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that feels safe and familiar. I remember feeling a little more tired than usual, but I didn't think much of it. My dog, Shadow, curled up at the foot of my bed, already half asleep. I turned off the lamp and let the darkness settle in, comforted by the soft hum of the fan above me. As I closed my eyes, I felt a strange chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off as just a draft from the window. The world outside was calm, and I drifted off to sleep, completely unaware that anything was wrong. Looking back, I wish I had paid more attention to that uneasy feeling. Sometimes the smallest details are the ones that matter most. That night, I had no idea that something was already watching, waiting for the perfect moment to make itself known. The first sign that something was off came in the form of a dream. At least, I thought it was a dream at first. I found myself standing in the middle of my room, but everything looked distorted, as if I was seeing it through a foggy lens. The shadows in the corners seemed to move, stretching and twisting in ways that didn't make sense. I heard a faint whisper, so soft I couldn't make out the words, but it sent a shiver through my entire body. Suddenly, I was back in bed, heart pounding, unsure if I had actually woken up or if I was still dreaming. I glanced at the clock, 3:07 a.m. Shadow was awake now, ears perked up, staring intently at the darkest corner of the room. I called his name, but he didn't move, didn't even look at me. The air felt heavier, and I realized I was holding my breath. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just a nightmare. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. That was the first time I truly felt like I wasn't alone in my own room. The next night, I tried to convince myself that everything was normal. I went through my routine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As soon as I turned off the lights, the room felt colder, and the silence seemed to press in on me from all sides. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, listening for any sound that might explain the unease crawling up my spine. That's when I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible breathing coming from the corner of the room. It wasn't Shadow. He was asleep, his breathing slow and steady. This was different, unnatural, as if someone or something was trying to stay hidden. I wanted to tell myself it was just my imagination, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Every time I closed my eyes, I could sense eyes on me, unblinking and patient. I pulled the covers up to my chin, heart racing, and waited for morning. The hours dragged on, and I barely slept. When the sun finally rose, I felt exhausted, but also strangely relieved. Whatever had been in my room seemed to vanish with the daylight, but I knew it would be back. The following night, I was almost too afraid to go to bed. I left the hallway light on, hoping it would keep the darkness at bay. Shadow seemed uneasy, too, pacing around the room before finally settling down next to me. I tried to distract myself by reading, but every little noise made me jump. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted off to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up with a start. I couldn't move. My body felt like it was made of stone, and a crushing weight pressed down on my chest. My eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of my fear. That's when I saw it, a shadowy figure standing in the corner, darker than the rest of the room, its outline barely visible but unmistakably there. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure didn't move, but I could feel its gaze locked on me, cold and unfeeling. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath in the dim light. I was trapped, helpless, forced to endure the terror until, finally, the paralysis faded and the figure disappeared. After that night, everything changed. I was constantly on edge, jumping at every sound and shadow. Even during the day, I felt like I was being watched, as if the presence from my room had followed me into the rest of the house. My family noticed the change in me, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them what was happening. I started leaving the lights on all night, but it didn't help. The feeling of being watched only grew stronger, especially when I was alone. Shadow became more anxious, too, barking at empty corners and refusing to sleep in my room. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, but deep down, I knew the truth was otherwise. The presence was getting bolder, coming closer each night. Sometimes I would wake up to find my blankets pulled off or objects in my room moved. The fear became a constant companion, and I dreaded the moment when night would fall and I would have to face whatever was haunting me once again. The worst night of all began like the others, but the fear was heavier than ever. I barely slept, tossing and turning, trying to stay awake as long as possible. But eventually, exhaustion took over, and I drifted into a restless sleep. I woke up suddenly, paralyzed again, unable to move or even blink. The room was darker than usual, and the air felt thick and suffocating. I could sense the presence right next to my bed, closer than it had ever been before. I felt a cold breath on my face, and a whisper so close to my ear that I could almost make out the words. My heart pounded in my chest, and I tried desperately to break free, to scream, to do anything. The shadowy figure leaned over me, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. For a moment, I thought it would never end. But then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the paralysis lifted. I shot up in bed, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. The room was empty, but the fear lingered, more real than ever. The days that followed were a blur of exhaustion and anxiety. I barely slept, afraid that the presence would return if I let my guard down. My family grew more concerned, urging me to see a doctor or talk to someone about what I was experiencing. I tried to explain, but how do you tell someone that you're being haunted by something you can see? Shadow refused to enter my room, and I started sleeping with the lights on, hoping it would keep the darkness and whatever was in it away. I researched sleep paralysis and nightmares, trying to find a logical explanation, but nothing seemed to fit what I was going through. The fear became a part of my daily life, always lurking in the background. I started to wonder if I would ever feel safe in my own home again. Even in the daylight, I would catch glimpses of shadows moving just out of sight, or feel a chill run down my spine for no reason. The experience changed me, making me more cautious, more aware of the things that hide in the dark. Looking back, I still don't know exactly what happened to me during those nights. Was it just sleep paralysis? Or was there really something watching me from the shadows? I may never have all the answers, but I do know that the fear I felt was real, and it left a mark on me that I'll never forget. I've learned to respect the unknown, to trust my instincts when something doesn't feel right. Shadow eventually started sleeping in my room again, but I still keep a nightlight on, just in case. I share my story, not to scare you, but to let you know that if you've ever felt watched or experienced something you can explain, you're not alone. Sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't see, the ones that lurk just out of sight, waiting for us to close our eyes. If you've ever had a similar experience, I hope you'll share it in the comments. Maybe together we can find some comfort in knowing we're not the only ones who have faced the darkness. And remember, sometimes the feeling of being watched isn't just in your head. Thank you for listening to my story. Even now, I sometimes find myself lying awake at night, wondering if something is still watching from the shadows. The fear I felt during those nights changed the way I see the world, and it taught me to never ignore that uneasy feeling when something just doesn't feel right. If you've ever experienced anything similar, or if you have your own story about feeling watched while you slept, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. Sharing these experiences helps remind us that we're not alone, even when the darkness feels overwhelming. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more true, scary, sleep, nightmare stories, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't see, but we can always feel them watching. Good night.